Okay, and I'm sharing my screen now. Please confirm if you guys can see the screen and the voice is also clear.
Yes, sir. Your screen is visible and voice also clear.
Great. So let's go and try to understand this part. Oh, okay. So today we are going to discuss how to protect and secure the virtual machines. Along with that, how to deploy the Linux virtual machine in Azure portal. Okay. So how many of you have already created the free tier account in Azure? Suraj,
I already created.
you already created. So make
Yes.
sure that you start using it because the complete free tier account is going to be expired within 30 days, and
Yes.
post that you will not get any kind of extension. And I believe I already told you that how to create your free tier account, right?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Okay, so please get it completed as early as possible because we are going to deep dive into the hands-on practical going forward. So you will see almost 80 to 90% of the practical demo and almost 10 to 15% theoretical part. Okay,
Okay.
so the right way of learning it, uh, you can just pay the concentrate here, pay at full attention during the class, and then you can refer this recording and do your practical, right?
Correct, sir.
Okay, so let's go and try to deploy. So first thing first, what we are going to do, we are going to deploy the Linux virtual machine. We have been talking Windows virtual machine since last couple of weeks or so. So today we are going to deploy the Linux virtual machine. We'll understand how do we connect and what kind of components of the command that we need to run in order to accomplish this web part on the Linux. We are going to make the server as a web server, which is also known as Apache in Linux. Okay, that part we are going to do today. Once we deploy the Linux and couple of Windows virtual machine, we will talk about something known as how to secure the virtual machine. All
Okay.
right. So
Okay.
let's start with the one of first practical for the day is to create the Linux virtual machine. Okay. So of
Okay.
course, what is the way that we spoke and understood a very first time when you're trying to deploy the virtual machine, what is the first thing that you need to do?
So we have to create the resource group,
Hmm.
and then inside the resource group, we have to create the work machines.
Yes, so this is going to be the resource group, and then
Okay. We have to create the virtual machines.
are we missing anything else? Resource group is a kind of logical boundary or the container, and then
Okay.
after that, what next? Here for instance we are just talking the resource group is one of the reason. So we are defining the logical boundaries.
Correct.
Thereafter, we also have to define something known as network boundaries,
Correct. Correct. Network
right?
one.
So
Correct.
after that, once you create the resource group, subsequently you have to go and create the network, virtual network. So here, this would be your virtual network. So resource group and then a virtual network. And finally, we will be creating the virtual
Virtual
machine.
machine.
Okay.
Okay.
And my setting for the laptop has been reset, so that is why I'm struggling a little today. I think should be able to see now. Let me also add some more library. Yeah, I think it's sufficient. Okay, so finally we will be deploying the virtual machine like this. Okay, so this is what we should be able to, this is the correct way of deploying the virtual machine. So as part of our understanding, for the ease of understanding what we are doing right now, we are just focusing on this part, virtual machine. Okay, we are not talking anything on the network layer, because again, network layer, if you do not have the right set of knowledge on the network, it might create some sort of confusion. So we are just bypassing this network component for now, and we are trying to understand the virtual machine. Okay, so
Okay.
here is the network components. Fair enough. So what we are going to do now, we are going to create a virtual machine. Let's go ahead and create it. So of course, uh, in a very first time, what we understood, and when we went through the deep dive of creating each and every steps for the virtual machine, we understood that, okay, first thing first, we need to create the resource group where we will be defining the reason of wherever you're trying to deploy the virtual machine. Then we will be creating a network component, and then finally the virtual machine. So for now, what we understood, this is a sequence, but how do we create it here on the fly? Also, if you are not following, or if not follow this chronicle steps, though you can, or you should be able to create a new virtual machine on the fly. So if I'm trying to create a new virtual machine, and if I'm not created any sort of resource group and network components, what happened here? So if you see that, this is my subscription and this is the resource group. So if I create a new resource group, if I say AZ VM lab, so resource group has been created. Under that, I'll be giving a virtual machine. So here, Linux VM -01. Okay. Now, the reason I'm going to keep it our India location, Central India. And here, instead of Windows image, this time I'm going to opt the Linux. Okay, so if I type here, you see that Ubuntu, Rocky Linux, Debian Linux, SUSE Linux, Red Hat, every sort of Linux version you will find it. So Microsoft love Linux, and Windows and Linux, both the operating system can be found under this marketplace. Okay, so now if I want to create Linux, so what I have to do, I have to go and select this one. So I've chosen here the Ubuntu server 20.4 LTS. Okay, this is the image that I have chosen this time. Now, size, I can, of course, I can talk various size here. I think size part is still pending on the theoretical part. We'll just cover it after this. So for now, for this demonstration, I've chosen this D2 series, 8 gigabytes memory, right? Now, authentication type. What does it mean, authentication type? Whether you can go for SSH public key or the password. Either of one you have to choose. Any idea, guys? What is that authentication type here? What actually it means when you talk about authentication here for the virtual machine? Anyone? Suraj, Shadab. Okay. So this authentication means that by using these credentials, you will be logging to the virtual machine, right? So in Windows, we don't have this option. In Windows, while creating this virtual machine from the Windows prospect, we do not have this option. We cannot opt SSH public key, right? But here in this authentication type, we will be able to choose either SSH public keys or password. Okay, so let's try to select the password this time. So now here I need to supply the credentials. All right, username, password. Okay, now when we talk about Windows virtual machine, we had something called port number 3389, right? That is a RDP port. Similarly, for for Linux, we have the defined port, which is SSH, and it works on port number 22. Okay, so we'll say allow public inbound port. Remember, guys, we spoke about inbound and outbound,
Okay, yes, sir.
right? So
Yes.
can you help me to understand what is inbound and what is outbound?
Inbound side means we have to connect with the system, virtual machines, which is inbound, and through virtual machine to outside the network connected. That means the outbound.
Right. So in this case, we're talking inbound connection. So inbound is
So,
something which we are going to make a connection with the virtual machine. So that
correct.
is inbound, right?
Inbound.
So we have
Correct.
to open this port. Otherwise, we will not be able to make any sort of connectivity. Okay.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir.
So let's go ahead. And here we will be talking about the OS disk. What kind of OS disk we are going to choose? So if it is a OS disk type, it's going to be premium or it's going to be standard. Of course, we have already spoken about premium SSD and HDD. So for the ease of this demonstration, I'm choosing this standard SSD. All right. Now, if you want, you can add the data disk, but we have already done this practical, so we are not going to do it again. Next is monitoring section. And here under that, you can see the virtual network concept or the networking layer has already been created for us. So if you're not good enough in the network also, Microsoft gives you a default network configuration. Okay. So here you will be seeing virtual network, subnet followed by public IP, NIC card, and your inbound port and outbound port. All of this necessary configuration related to network you should be able to see here. Okay. Now, once you're done and selected this network configuration, and why we are talking and why we have been saying that okay, network is a crucial part of any virtual machine. Okay, just try to understand here. If I go and type say network component, when we talk about network component, usually we talk about a set of IP addresses. Okay, every virtual machine by default, whenever we deploy, it has two set of IP addresses. You will see a public IP address and private IP address. A public IP address will look like something similar to this: 4.5.6.78 point something. Okay, and here again private IP will look like 10.1.0.10 okay. So every time you deploy the network, you will be having two set of IP addresses, and here you will be knowing, I mean, the terminology what we use in Azure, it's known as VNet. We talk about VNet and subnet. Okay, so VNet has a two set of IP addresses. Of course, subnet is a logical division of your virtual network. So we will get into this detail little later. The idea for now to make you understand why it is essential part of your network component is because if you have not planned and designed your network properly in a coming days, suppose if you wanted to expand your network or expand your region to one to another, then there could be some sort of overlapping with respect to IP addresses. Overlapping in sense that you have been already using one set of IP addresses, but you don't know you because you're not keeping any track. Same sort of IP addresses you might have used in for another resource group, or say in on-prem environment, you have already have the same set of IP addresses. Now, when the machine is trying to communicate on-prem and Azure, they have the same set of IP addresses, and then there would be a kind of conflict. And because of this conflict, the connection will not establish. Got it? That is why we keep on saying the network is crucial part of virtual machine. And intentionally, we are not going to deep dive for now because we are just talking the virtual machine, the compute of the virtual machine, compute power of the Azure. Make sense, guys?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. So let's go ahead and proceed. Here we have the same management will not bother about for now, and then we'll proceed with the review and create. So how many of you have exposure on Linux virtual machine? Have you ever worked on Linux? Any platform? Yes, no, maybe.
No, sir. No. Actually, I don't have any pure
Okay,
exposure on the Linux.
fair enough. And that's why we are here to gain this knowledge, right? So now if
Okay, sir.
I ask you that, okay, how do we connect to this virtual machine? So for the Windows, it was quite easy, right? We can just go to the RDP and connect from taking on IP address on the port number 3389. But as far as Linux part is concerned, we cannot do this. We have to have some sort of tool to connect to the Linux virtual machine. Okay, and this tool is known as PuTTY. Now, have you heard about PuTTY?
Yes, sir. Actually,
Yes.
one type of
So the PuTTY, of course, there are two set of PuTTY. One is PuTTY client, another one is PuTTY app generation. Okay, so generation is something that when you authenticate with SSH keys or the SSH public key, during that time you might use it. Or sometime we also need to generate the SSH keys. Okay, for now, if you really wanted to connect through the PuTTY, you can come and search here, which can PuTTY for Windows, PuTTY download. So this is the software that you need to download on your local PC of your, probably you're using desktop or laptop. So you'll have to download this PuTTY. Once you download this PuTTY, using this PuTTY only, you should be able to take RDP. Okay, let me demonstrate quickly. So if I try to connect now, and if I say that, okay, I want to connect to SSH. Okay, so SSH, this is what it's giving me, that option to connect through SSH and RDP. But it is not giving me username and password to connect it, right? So what I have to do, I need to open the PuTTY. So if I just type PuTTY generation, PuTTY. So here we have two flavor of PuTTY rather. One is your generation and one other one is your app. So generation is something that we will be able to generate some sort of public and set of private IPs, set of keys, not private IP, a set of keys. Okay. But for PuTTY is something that we should be able to connect to respective Linux virtual machine using your local PC, whether it is a desktop or laptop. So we are trying to connect the virtual machine which is there on the Azure environment through our local PC. All right. So if I connect here, hit on open. So here, the first thing first, we need to give the host name. So if I click here, so now tell me guys, one more thing. I have a set of IP, public IP and the private IP. So which IP I should be connecting in order to establish a connectivity from my local PC to this virtual machine, which is there in a portal.
public IP.
Why?
Actually, sir, we have to means we are in a public. We have a public IP. We are in a public IP.
Yes, we have to have the public IP because otherwise we will not be able to connect using the private IP. The reason being is because we have not
We
made
need to
any
go
sort
on
of,
the same segment.
yes, we have not created any sort of, you know, communication or any sort of tool to connect over the private IP. Going forward, we will be talking about how do we connect this virtual machine using the public IP, private IP address as well.
Okay.
Okay, so for now, if I take this public IP and hit on hostname under this and click on open and accept this connection, so it is prompting me to supply the credentials. Okay, so if I type here my credentials, which I had given at the time of deployment, and the password, so I'm in now. So this is my Linux console for this virtual machine. So if I type anything here, so it is giving me this is the Ubuntu 20.4.6 LTS community. Okay, so
Okay.
this is one way of connecting Linux virtual machine. Another way of connecting is using through SSH keys. That also we can use it while connecting to Linux. Okay, now let's try and understand. Say we have deployed this virtual machine. Assume that we have a okay. Before we go here, let's also understand something known as sizing of virtual machine. I think that is something we missed that day. Okay. Now, when we talk about virtual machine sizing or a type of virtual machine in Azure, what kind of Azure virtual machine sizing or series we have it? So it starts with the A series and it goes up to N series. Okay. So if I take you directly to the Microsoft portal, because that is always up to date. So here you have a A series. Here you have a A series, a BS series, and D series. So normally when we talk about sizing of the virtual machine, it start with the A series, which is entry level for the VM, which is being used for the dev and test environment. Okay. Now example of such workload, development and test server, low traffic web servers, small to medium databases, servers from your proof and concept and code repositories. So it is like, entry level of the VMs. Then for economically VM, if you talk about it is BS series. An example of such workload, these are the workloads. Then we have a D series. D series is general compute purpose, and this is the example, and this is what we use it. And most of the organization, even in the prod environment, also we use the D series, which is more towards your general purpose compute. An example of such workload, these are the workload. It is being used for the media server. It is being used for databases. It is also being used for the application servers and virtualization, e-commerce system, and so on. Okay. Now, similarly, we have E series optimized for the in-memory application. So, one question might come in your mind when you talk about the series or VM series here. Okay. So do we need to memorize this? No, you do not have to. But you need to have the high level of understanding that what kind of application you are going to host. Accordingly, you will choose the size of the virtual machine. For instance, if you wanted to deploy SAP HANA, so of course SAP HANA consume or need more compute. So you will choose some series of virtual machine which is inclined towards the compute. Okay. For instance, your E series is more towards optimize in memory application. So in exam, there's a high possibility that they will give you such scenario and will ask you that, okay, you have a three or four options. Tell us which one you're going to use it for this purpose. So you should be able to answer it, and that is why I walk you through here as part of example where you can see example includes SAP HANA, SAP HANA application layer, SAP uh, NetWeaver application, and so on. Now, whenever you need to have F series, so F series is mainly used for your batch processing, web servers, analytics, and gaming. For that, you will be using F series. Similarly, for your machine learning and all, that you can use for, you know, M series or something. Now, for SQL databases or MongoDB or databases, you can go for LS series. Okay, so these are the kind of series we have it in Azure. Okay, so let's go ahead and storage option we spoke, creating virtual machine we spoke, virtual machine availability we'll talk about later. Now we will be talking how to secure virtual machine. Okay, there is a one great thing to learn, that how do we say, we have spoken that private, and whenever we deploy the virtual machine, a two set of IPs are also associated with this virtual machine, public IP and private IP. And ever since we started learning, I have been advocating that we should always stick to the private IP address. Now tell me guys, why do we not expose the public IP, or why should not we expose our virtual machine in a public network? What is the consequences? What is the threat here associated with your virtual machine if you open the public port and if you keep your public IP associated with your virtual machine? Any rough idea?
So, generally for hacking or some other purpose.
Yeah, that is main threat, that you should not expose your virtual machine in the public network, because there's a high chances of hacking your virtual machine, because it is open for your bad actors. Anyone can hack any data, you know. So very well known port will be disabled in the prod environment, as well as your public IP will not associate, and normally in the prod environment we will not associate public IP with your virtual machine. Of course, exception could be there where one or two virtual machines will be a part of your public IP, but majority of the cases we will not expose a virtual machine over public interface. Okay, so in Azure, what all the options we have it? So if we do not connect over the public IP, how do we connect? What all the options we have it? We should be taking the private IP route. Okay, we should be taking the private IP route. And here we will be defining that, okay, these are the tools, techniques we should be incorporating in our solution in order to connect to this virtual machine using the private IPs. All right. So in Azure, what are the tools we have it? We have three tools. Three tools to first one is known as Azure Bastion service. Our second one is known as firewall, Azure firewall. Our third one is your VPN connectivity. So as we get along, we will be exploring all of these technique, tools, and the concept to concrete the understanding of how to protect the virtual machine. Okay. So we are talking here Azure Bastion service. So one way is definitely you to protect our virtual machine or secure our virtual machine is Bastion service. I mean, this is the tool where we should be using it to protect our virtual machine, and we will not expose our virtual machine in a public interface. Now, these are the terminology and the techniques to equip private IP using the public IP. Okay, so we will be exploring a very first concept which is known as best in service. Okay, now in a general term, other than virtual machine, other than protecting your virtual machine from the public interface, what all the other options you can think, guys? How do we protect our virtual machine? What all the best practices where you should be thinking to protect our virtual machine? Or have you heard about something called hardening of your image? I believe since you guys are in corporate, you must have understood and must be knowing the importance of hardening the image. So when you go for hardening the image, what actually you do? Do we have any set of procedure standard where we can follow and we can ensure this by following this benchmark, the policies, we are ensuring our data is safe and our virtual machine is safe. We have just spoke about one part, which is not to associate a virtual machine with a public IP. What could be other aspect of protecting the virtual machine, guys?
No idea.
Okay, no problem. So I'll just remove this here and understand we have a different set of way to protect our virtual machine. One such way is to ensure that a physical protection, right? A physical protection. Now we are talking Azure and we are talking infrastructure as a service. So if you recall, who will do the physical protection of our virtual machine? Is it us or is it being performed by some other guys or the vendor? How you will ensure the physical protection is in place? Guys, we're talking the Microsoft Azure, right? And Microsoft Azure is maintained by whom? Microsoft only. So of course we do not have access on the physical. Remember we spoke about shared responsibility model. Under the shared responsibility model, we talk about who will be performing what. So being a consumer, being a customers, we will not bother about this part. Our physical security comes under scope of CSP, which is your cloud
Service provider.
providers. Cloud providers, right? Cloud
Right.
service provider. So in this case, it is responsibility for Microsoft. Microsoft. They are the one who will be protecting our virtual machine. And then any sort of physical threat, this is again their responsibility. Physical threat, physical protection, data center protection, and then the EXSI level protection, right? DDoS protections. So all of these will be performed by whom? By CSPs or cloud service provider. In our case, it is Microsoft. But being a customer, being a user of this virtual machine, what all methodology and what all the procedure that you can incorporate in your solutions to protect your virtual machine. If I give you one virtual machine, first thing first, what you will do to protect the virtual machine? So I'm talking the protection which is being which is being handled or in control by consumers. or customers, right? So one such protection is what? Say, forget about virtual machine. If you have your own laptop in front of you, your personal laptop, how do you protect your personal laptop?
So keep in safe place.
That is one thing. It means you are ensuring that physical security. Now, physical security is under your control, right? And that is why you are keeping it under safe location. Let's keep it aside. Other than physical security, I'm trying to give you some, some here a kind of heads up so that you should be able to answer it by yourself by jogging your brain, guys. Think, think again. You should be able to answer it. You have your own personal laptop. How do you ensure the protection? And when I'm talking protection or security, I'm talking in all the aspects.
We install the antivirus
Yes,
or
you're coming to the
latest
point. Yes,
latest
antivirus,
updates, latest updates.
antivirus, your latest patch, right?
Correct, sir.
Before that, you will also ensure that no Tom, Dick, and Harry can come and log into your laptop, right?
Correct, sir.
So you will ensure that only right set of people have access to your laptop. It means in you are doing kind of access control management also, which is known as ACL, right?
Correct,
That
sir.
okay, if you suppose if by any chance if you have to give this laptop to someone else, right? You will only give the certain access. Probably you will not give the local admin. Like a local admin, of course, do anything. So you will be defining the set of roles and set of control by giving the certain privileges. So that is also part of your list, which is nothing but your ACL. What else? Antivirus we spoke, latest patch we spoke. What else? What else could be, guys, here? Think you should be able to answer it. That's what I'm saying. Antivirus, latest patch. Okay, I'll give you one scenario. What happens if you have some data on your laptop and that is
So
a crucial data? Say,
BitLocker enables it.
sorry,
BitLocker enables it.
huh, that is
Encryption.
encryption, right? So encryption is also a part of. See, now you're guys able to answer it. So encryption plays a critical role. It's a one of the vital role that we should always entertain in our prod environment. Now, what else? Suppose you have some crucial data on your laptop, say 3 month salary slip, your offer letter, uh, your bank statement, so and so on. Do you keep all this data on your personal laptop under C drive or D drive? The things have changed over the period of time. Cloud has evolved so frequent and so wide that nobody wants to keep anything on the local system nowadays. So if you have some salary slip, bank statement, even the photos nowadays, everything is syncing where? It is syncing and keeping, everybody's keeping one sort of copy in your cloud. For example, you have Android device, right? You have the mobile Android device, you have the Apple device. The moment you change the device, what happens is nowadays if you're using the Android, you simply go and just log in, configure the Gmail, and everything will be configured on your latest device. You do not have to do any manual sync. Your latest photos will be there, your connect will be there, your contacts will be there. Of course, some sort of contact which are there in a local SIM, which might not be copied in a new device, but more or less you will see all set of apps, all sort of data, all sort of photos, videos, and the documents, everything is sync. So it is syncing from where? It is syncing from your cloud, which is Gmail, which is your Google Drive, right? So in case of any problem related to your virtual machine, we should also entertain something called backup, right? Backup and restoration. So backup and restoration is also a part of your list. Are we getting the point, guys?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So the example which I give you so that you can correlate why it is essential part of this. Of course, now you can think all of this concept. Of course, there are two or three more things here which we will be talking a little later. But more or less, these are the high level protection ways to protect and secure your virtual machine. Okay. And of course, when you go and talk about virtual machine, we are saying we do not expose public IP. Do not open the port, known port, which is 3389 for Windows, and for your Linux, it is
20,
SSH 22.
22.
Okay. So now we are going ahead. Of course, antivirus, you can use any antivirus, Symantec, Micro Trend Micro, Micro, your CrowdStrike, anything which is suitable for you, and ensure that latest patch is up to date, and ensure that whoever wants to access, you give the minimum privileges. At least if someone wants to have access on your virtual machine, do the proper assessment, and after the assessment, ensure that only certain people should have the admin privileges. Okay, who is a more responsible? uh, probably the server is quite critical, so you will think at least 100 times before giving the admin privileges. Admin Having admin privileges, it means a kind of threat of risk here. Then we talk about encryption. Say what happens, suppose you might be using your company laptop or your corporate laptop. I'm sure 99.9% companies nowadays, they encrypt the data of the laptop using the BitLocker. What is the concept for the BitLocker? Why they emphasize for BitLocker and encryption? Why we say encryption is a very vital part, and we should always encrypt our data.
Yep, protect the data from the on the cases of the thief. Suppose your laptop is a thief, and someone is get your laptop, and they can access all the things. So
Absolutely. Yes.
without the password, you can't access the drive on the time.
Absolutely. Yes. That is the way we see data nowadays is very crucial for any companies. If suppose you are having your company laptop and your laptop gets stolen, then nobody cares about your laptop. A company cares about the data which you're carrying. And that is why we have this encryption to protect the data in motion. The two concept, guys, right? We'll talk about these things little later. There are two things: a data in motion or data in rest. Data in rest. So what do you mean by data in motion? The data is traveling. For instance, you have the web server, and when people are trying to access the web server, they're opening through browser, right? You have some SaaS-based application which is being open on the browser. And of course, most of the data when it's browsed, right, it will be on the public interface. And to protect the data in motion, we have something called TLS. It used to be SSL now. Now it is transport layer security. Okay, whenever you have the TLS associated with your website, it means the data is safe and it has some sort of certificate. And by adherence to this, by complying to this certification, the data is moving under this tunnel. And that way we can say data is safe and secure. For instance, if you see this icon, this is a SSL certificate. And this SSL lock symbol is for all of the virtual machine and all of the safe website, here also, here also. So it means what? Data we are opening in the public interface and it is protected by symbol. Got it? So this is known as to save the data or to protect the data in motion. Okay. Now the data in rest is nothing but your data which is not moving. That is also our responsibility to ensure data is safe and sound. So that is why we have an encryption in place where we will be encrypting the data. Okay, so let's go and understand first the bastion service. So here it is. Let me also deploy um, one Linux virtual machine. Let's quickly deploy one Windows virtual machine. We will be deploying under same resource group win vm-01 Central India, and let's deploy 2000, and I'll just hit on review and create. So what we are trying to do now, we will be first of all we will be doing the practical for Azure Bastion service. Now while we do a practical, let's also understand the theoretical part of Bastion service. Till now, any questions, guys?
No.
Okay, 1 minute, let me have a sip of water. Okay, I'm back. So virtual machine, what is the intention here? Okay, now it is done. We'll go to something called Bastion service. Let's deploy it, and because the deployment will take approximately 5 to 10 minutes, and by the time we will be able to concentrate on the concept of Bastion service. Okay, so here is Bastion service. We will be deploying it here, or we will rather go to the virtual network. Under this we have this network, and here also we have a Bastion. So we will be deploying right here, deploy Bastion service. I hit on this, and now let it be run in the backend. Now we are going to understand the concept of this Bastion service. Okay, so let's go and understand this. Securing our virtual machine. Okay, this is one way of securing. So what is the Bastion service here? As you know, it is Bastion service is fully managed PaaS services. And when you say the PaaS service, what does it mean? What comes in your mind? PaaS means what?
Platform as a service.
Yeah, but how does it matter to you? As a consumer, when you use this Azure Bastion, what you are going to do, what Microsoft is going to do for you. Try to recall, guys, we have spoken in the past, we spoke about IaaS, PaaS, and SaaS. Now, why we are just emphasizing those concepts so that we should not only understand from the theoretical prospect, but in reality, when you're trying to use some application, you should also get the full understanding or concrete understanding why do we use this PaaS service. When you talk about PaaS service, remember it is something that you will be bothering about your application under the need any sort of hardware, how actually or functionalities, that is none of your business, right? You will not do anything. So when you talk about Azure Bastion, Azure Bastion service is fully managed PaaS services, which is control managed by Microsoft. Okay, that means if tomorrow, today I have, say in this case, if I take you to this diagram, what we have done it, I'll just remove everything. And here, resource group we have in Central India. And we have created a two set of virtual machine. One is Linux and another one is your Windows. Okay, one is Linux, another is Windows. What we are trying to do, we are trying to create a one bastion service and we are trying to deploy. Now these two virtual machine are part of same VNet. Okay, they are part of same VNet, which is say the VNet 01. So when we deploy the bastion service, we are not deploying on an individual virtual machine level. We are deploying the bastion service at this level where we have the VNet. Okay. So when we deploy the bastion service here, if suppose this is my bastion service, okay, I'm deploying here, right? The bastion service I'm deploying at the VNet level. So what is happening on these two virtual machine? Okay, on two virtual machine, when we deploy the bastion service, these two virtual machine will be a part of same scope, which is VNet 1. So now tomorrow, if I deploy two more virtual machine here, so this will still a part of same VNet. Okay, no matter, this is still going to be a same part of resource group. So no matter how many virtual machine you deploy here, end of the day, your one bastion service, which is managed by Microsoft, is still able to accommodate all of this virtual machine request. So scalability part will be taken care by Microsoft. Okay. So that is what it says. Now, what is the advantage using this patient service? So if I go here, so you can log into your Azure virtual machine and avoid public internet exposure using SSH or an RDP with private IP address only. You do not have to expose your virtual machine over the internet. You can very well connect using the private IP address. Okay. You can integrate through this, use your SSH key for authentication and so and so. What is the advantages having this? And this is the high level architecture. If suppose in this case I am the user, normally in what case? Normally if I do not use the bastion service, I'll be connecting using this, right? I'll be connecting here. I'll be connecting using this and say this is the direct connection to make it, right? But the moment I deploy the bastion service, I would be first connecting to portal, and from portal there is a bastion service, which in turn a kind of internet facing service. It is a internet facing service which have the in turn the backend connectivity for your virtual machine. Okay. So if any user now wanted to connect from the user prospect, from you end user to this virtual machine, they will first connect to the portal, and from the portal, the bastion service will connect to any of these virtual machines. And during these transitions or during this exercise, you do not need any sort of public IP. Okay. And you can either, this virtual machine could be a Linux, or it could be a Windows. It does not matter. Okay. So we will go, since we have already deployed the bastion service, we will go and verify the same. Now, this is the high level architecture for the bastion service. Any questions, guys, here?
No.
Okay, great. All right, so let's go and see that. So I'm here. The deployment is still going on. Okay, that is why I deploy a bit early. Now, in this diagram and in this, if you see that, there's a dedicated subnet, which is known as Azure Bastion subnet. This subnet has to be identical, and the keyword should be the same. You cannot change this Azure Bastion subnet to some other keyword something, because it is a boundary set by Microsoft. Okay. So we will be not using any other subnet rather than using only this subnet. So the deployment is still going on. And if you talk about the pricing, this is the pricing for the Azure Bastion service. Yeah, you can see that Azure Basic, since we are using the Basic, it is $0.9 per hour. And what is the outbound data transfer? It is free. If the data transfer is more than 5 GB to 10 gigabyte, 10 terabyte per month, then it is this much. And this is the high level pricing structure for Bastion service. Okay, so we'll have to wait for some more time, it seems. So what is happening behind the scene? It is creating a one subnet, which is Azure Bastion subnet, and the subnet range is 26 or above. So if I open this in a duplicate tab and try to find here subnet. So here you can see Azure Bastion subnet. So this is being generated by this console, or the one which we hit on deploy. So behind the scene, it is creating all sort of prerequisites which are needed to set up these services. In the meantime, guys, you have any question, please feel free to ask. Not relevant to today's topic, anything which we discussed in the previous class, let's utilize this time. So now let's see what would be the behavior. So if I, since we already seen that what is the behavior for our Linux virtual machine, now if I try to open Windows virtual machine, and I do have this Windows virtual machine running in my uh, environment using this public IP, and if I try to connect with with the RDP, I should be able to connect this server without any hiccup, right? Without any issue, I should be able to log in. So I'm in here. There's no issue at all. I'm able to connect this virtual machine. Okay. Now, what if I try to connect this virtual machine using the private IP, which is here? Okay. Will I able to make a connection? No, I'll not. So let's see that it's not connecting, right? Because this is the default behavior. It will not allow to connect. So what we will be doing it now, once this part is deployed, we will be connecting this Bastion virtual machine using the Bastion service, and we will be deassociating this public IP from this virtual machine. So how do I do it? This is still running. Not sure why it is taking time. Normally 5 to 10 minutes it completes, but let's see. So now if I try to deassociate or detach this public IP, if I go here under overview and click on deassociate. So I'm detaching this public IP from this virtual machine. So what is the IP left for this VM is only the private IP now. Okay. So if you see here under the virtual machine VM public IP, there's no public IP now. I have only private IP for this virtual machine. Okay. So once the deployment complete, I should be able to connect to my virtual machine using the Bastion service. Same is very much true, either it is a Linux virtual machine or Windows virtual machine. Any doubt with respect to this service, guys?
No, sir, no.
Nothing? Great. Okay, so now it's completed and we have deployed this service. Let's go and verify. So now if I come to this Windows virtual machine, okay, and refresh it, since we have detached the public IP from this virtual machine, now if I try to connect to, so I will be choosing Bastion this time. Instead of connecting directly to RDP, I'll be choosing something called Bastion. And under this, I'll be supplying the credentials. Of course, I should be knowing the credential of my virtual machine. And hit on connect. And here some pop-up block. I need to connect again. So if you see that, I'm able to connect to my Windows virtual machine. This is the Windows virtual machine. Okay, and it is going through Bastion service. So if I hit here, you see that connection is secure and it is going through this. This is Microsoft certification and this is bastion.azure.com. Again, since the data is traveling, it is protected with TLS certificate. Connection is secure. Clear?
Yes, sir.
Now, similarly, if I want to connect to my Linux virtual machine, okay, so what I have to do here, I would be connecting. I'll come here to the virtual machine and hit on in Linux. Again, this time I'm going to connect using this Bastion. And again, I need to type the credentials for my Linux virtual machine. So if I type here, so this is my Linux. Okay. So in both the cases, it's quite possible that we can detach the public IP, even though I should be able to make a connection using the Bastion service to these virtual machines. It doesn't matter whether your virtual machine is a Windows or Linux. Is it clear to everyone, guys?
Yes.
Okay, great. So another way that we are going to do to protect our virtual machine using encryption, right? So now if you talk about encryption, and this is the virtual machine. Now something which you already spoke set up, right? In your environment, in your company environment, you guys are using BitLocker, right? So When you use this BitLocker technology, you are using to protect the data, which is data already in rest. It is not in motion, right? When the data is in rest, you are protecting it. Clear? So same thing we will be doing for our virtual machine. We'll ensure the data is safe, secure and safe. And for this, we will be using key vault along with some sort of encryption keys to protect the data disk, okay, and the OS disk. So if I come to Windows virtual machine here, and if I already logged in, okay, yeah. And if I open my this PC, so right now I have a C drive and D drive. And how do you verify, guys? How do you verify that, okay, whether the BitLocker has been enabled for this virtual machine or for your laptop? How do how do you verify or validate? What is the process for validating?
One is your drive is encrypted. Drive is encrypted and it's showing as a log.
Correct. Yes. So the moment you encrypt the data, it will be, you can see a kind of lock symbol. It means data is protected. So right now, these two drive, C and D drive, is not locked. So if I wanted to equip the encryption and wanted to have the lock symbol, I have to encrypt this data, right? So let's go and do this practically. How do we do it? A very first time we have to go and deploy something known as key vault. Okay, and the key vault which I'm going to deploy, it has to be a part of same resource group. In our case, my resource group name is AZVM Lab and it is located in Central India. So if I type here a key vault, this is the key vault, and hit on create, we will be creating a new key vault under the same resource group. Okay, and ensure that the region which you are selecting, it has to be matching with your virtual machine. So in our case, it is Central India. We will be using Central India. And of course, we have a pricing tier, standard, basic, and some sort of advanced. So depending on kind of pricing tier which you select, you will be getting more features. So I'm just going ahead with the standard one, and date to retrieve the deleted data 90 days, and then I'll proceed creating the same. This is next, and here I'll be granting all sort of permission, and here all sort of permission, so that this user should not have any problem while protecting or encrypting the virtual machine disk. Hit on review and create. And now hit on create. So deployment is in progress. Once it is done, we will be going ahead and encrypt our virtual machine using the PowerShell script. Okay, so now this is done. So here it is. This is the key vault for my resources. Okay, now the next option would be to encrypt my virtual machine drives, and for that I'll be using something called encryption, and I'll open some, kind of here PowerShell ISC. And here I'll be opening, let me see where is the key. One is, let me see the keys. T- Okay, it's here. This PC. Which drive it is? C drive, D drive. Okay, D drive. 16, and then yeah. Okay, so let me share my screen again. I hope you guys can see my screen again, Sadab and everyone.
Yes.
Okay, so this is my key vault, and this is the script. Now I need to just change the parameter here to encrypt my virtual machine. Okay, so what all I have to do, this is my resource group. So I need to change these three things: resource group name, VM name, and key vault. Okay, so if I go back to my portal here, so first of all, resource group. So this is the resource group I have copied here, pasted under this. Then the VM name is going to be, first of all, let's change this key vault. So I'm going to give the key vault name. This is the key vault name. And the VM name is going to be, I'm going to protect Windows first. So I'll use the Windows virtual machine, which is this one. And now I'll copy everything from here and run this under here. Since it is a PowerShell command or commandlet, I should be able to execute here. Okay, I've copied the command, modify the the parameter. Now if I paste it under here and hit on enter, it is asking me to save any sort of, you know open item in your virtual machine. So it will be, there's a high chances the virtual machine might reboot. I'll say yes, go ahead. And now it's going to encrypt my virtual machine drives. Okay, so we got no error message. So if you see the succeeded rate here, status is okay, reason and everything is okay. There's no problem at all. Now if I go to the virtual machine here, see the lock symbol has been visible now. We can see the lock symbol on the C drive, and we can also see the lock symbol on D drive. Again, depending on the data disk, if you have some F drive G drive, anything else, and you wanted to only protect that data, so you can define and change the parameter. Instead of all, here you can change the volume type. You can say C drive, D drive, whatever you feel so, and then change the type here, volume type. So it will also only encrypt the data disk or the data drive which you want. So these are the common methodology which we use to protect our virtual machines. Is there any doubt, questions, concern, guys?
Sir, one question is that
Mhm.
you have to put the command. So how can we have to all this command to get, sir?
I'll do one thing. I'll upload this today by EOD. I'll upload with a script command. I'll under
Yes,
the
sir.
script command, I'll
Okay.
upload all this PowerShell script
Yes, sir. It will be
as
helpful
part of,
for.
yes, definitely, as part of recording. I'll
Yes.
paste it all this.
Okay. Thank you.
So yes, and then we will be having something called scalability and the role. So we will be talking all this in the next week session, guys. Because today two more people was about to join, but because of some fever or something, they could not join. So we will be just wrapping it here, and we'll connect again in the next week. And if needed, we'll stretch it.
Sure, sir.
All right.
Okay,
Okay,
sir.
Sada. Take care then. Happy weekend.
Thank you,
Bye
sir.
bye.
Thank you, sir. Bye. Good night, sir.
Good night.